You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. In this episode, we look at something that most people completely miss when they think about ransomware, and that's the cost of a ransomware attack is way beyond the cost of the ransom itself. Join me and my co-host Prasanna as we talk to Dr. Mike Saylor, who's the co-author on my latest book, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery. We walk through real cases like the UVM Health Network attack that ran up a $63 million tab without paying the ransom. Lost revenue, regulatory fines, staff burnout, reputational damage, supply chain chaos, and cyber insurance fine print that I think might surprise you. If you think the ransom is the biggest part of the bill, stick around. I think you're in for a shock. Just a quick note about me. I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I've been obsessing over backup recovery and now cyber recovery for over 30 years. If that's your bag, then I'm your guy. You're not going to find anybody that cares about it more than me. Ever since 1993, when I had to tell my boss that there were no backups of that database that we just lost. Now I've written 5 books, a blog, and a podcast. Here we turn unappreciated admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Hi folks, wanted to mention my new book, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery, which is now available for pre-order at Amazon.com. I wrote it with my co-author, Dr. Mike Saylor, who's a blue team cyber defense expert. He really knows his stuff. There are dozens of books to tell you how not to get ransomware. Our book starts with the assumption you're probably going to get ransomware. So we tell you how to respond to it and how to recover from it. It's unlike anything else out there. We tell you what you need to do now to be able to respond when it happens. We covered defenses to reduce the blast radius, how to protect your backup system, incident response procedures, negotiation strategies, backup recovery techniques, and how to prevent it from happening again. The tech reviewers gave it overwhelmingly positive feedback, so I think it's going to be a big seller. Pre-order it now. Search for Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery, or just look for my name, W. Curtis Preston. Hope you like it. Hi, and welcome to the Backup Wrap-Up. I'm your host, W. Curtis Preston, a.k.a. Mr. Backup, and I have with me a guy who just confessed his love for me, Prasanna Malaiyandi. How's it going, Prasanna?
Why do you sound so shocked? That's what I want to know.
It's a mutual admiration society. You doing all right over there with your branded shirt, which I still can't find? I swear, I've looked everywhere.
If you're doing swag or doing things, you need to buy 4 for yourself.
Well, clearly more than one. I swear to God, yes. I have looked all over this house. I've even hired professionals to clean. And then
and
after
2
that,
is not enough for you, Curtis, I have to say.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to do? And then also with us, we have somebody who I swear I'm sure would not lose a branded piece of swag if I sent it to him. Dr. Mike Saylor. How's it going, Mike?
It's going great, guys. And just to be upfront, I will probably ask for 4.
So you got CRS as well? Can't remember stuff?
No, it's because I would probably wear one each day. And it's
like the Einstein approach, right?
Simplify my wardrobe. That's right.
Right.
But if you are wearing the same thing every day, do you technically need 4? Can you just wear one and wear it 4 days and no one will never notice? As long as it doesn't smell.
Well, there's more to it in my thinking. It's about efficiency and economy. And so if I only had one, then I would have to wash it the next day. Well, I'm not just going to wash one shirt. So after 4 days, I've probably got a decent amount of laundry to do. Or 3 days, I guess.
Smart man.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are not going to be talking about wardrobes anymore.
Can we talk about laundry?
Yeah. We're going to talk about the hidden cost of a breach. And, I was looking around for some stories in terms of, ones that talk about, that show how much more the cost of a breach, how much more of it has to do with things that aren't the ransom. We when we talk about ransomware, we talk about how expensive that ransom can be. But this episode, we want you to think about what else might a ransomware attack cost you. And I'm going to start with this attack from the UVM Health Network in October of 2020. It crippled their IT systems for nearly a month, costing over $63 million. Started from initially via a phishing email. And they had to use, if you can get this. By the way, I'm a fan. I did it again. All right. So it forced the staff to use paper records, obviously delayed patient care, shutting down over 1,300 servers. I'm a fan of this TV show called The Pit. And in The Pit, they are currently experiencing this exact outage, and they are switching to paper records. And, if you're not a fan of the show, it's a huge hit. And if you are a fan, make sure that you watch it and you look at this, because it really gives you an idea of the impact to the rest of the business. We're so tied to technology that we don't know. And imagine when you think about the degree to which technology has impacted healthcare, right? So they talked about how it impacted radiology, laboratory services, and they used something called the My Chart portal, which imagine if all of your patients.
My healthcare provider uses that.
Oh, do they? My Chart. Imagine if that's how everybody finds out about their healthcare, and then suddenly it's gone, right? So they're saying 5,000 computers and 1,300 servers were encrypted. You have any other details on this story, Mike?
Just a few. I mean, I think it's interesting how it actually happened. An employee took their work laptop with him on vacation, opened a phishing email, laptop got compromised, brought it back into the environment, and then the malware spread once it reconnected to the company's network. So that was interesting. And then the other part about that is it's not very often that we catch the bad guys.
Right.
Not that it offered any latitude here, other than you've got from a victim perspective, you've got some damages you could probably collect from this guy pounding rocks in jail. But they did catch him. It was a Ukrainian hacker. But we'll jump into some of the other things to think about from a damages perspective. It's not just financial, directly related to ransom or directly even related to your recovery efforts. There's a lot of other things to think about. Yeah.
Prasanna, can you think about what would be the first thing that you would think? Obviously the ransom, right? What would you think would be the first thing that we would talk about when we lost revenue? I answered the question, but
no, I'm not even thinking about that stuff, right?
Okay.
What went to my mind, right? You pay a ransom, great.
Mm-hmm.
There's a cost of sort of recovering your environment, right? Be it people going around re-imaging systems, trying to recover data, getting things back up and running. And probably it's all the stuff that Mike and we've talked about on the podcast before, right? It's that process of just recovering your environment,
right?
And which might take weeks or months, and there is a cost associated with that beyond just sort of hey, I paid the ransom.
Well, let's talk about that. What type of costs are we talking about? Are we talking about overtime? Because generally,
people.
People, right? Mike, I was just thinking about whether or not overtime would happen. That's probably not a lot of IT people. They're generally staffed, right? They're generally exempt, right? IT people.
It depends on their role. In order to be exempt, you have to be in a leadership, independent role. A lot of lower level IT and cyber people are not, so they would be eligible for overtime.
So that'd be a big cost, right? So
or hiring people like Mike to come in to help them.
Well, yeah, that was definitely the next, right? So hopefully you are going. One of the things that we make in one of the points that I know we make in this lovely book here, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery.
Yeah, for people who don't know, we have video. You can watch us describe things. You can see Curtis point at the book right behind him. If you go to YouTube and search for this channel, we are there.
By the way, none of us have the actual book. Have you received your books yet, Mike?
I have not.
The actual? Okay. Yeah. Yep. It's going to happen just at some point. Then you'll be able to like hold it up. I was looking at some of my, there's my other books up there on the shelf. It's very cool once you finally have it in your hot little hands. But yeah, so one of the things that we recommend is that before all of this happens, because Mike, what position did we take in the book as to whether or not the odds that this would eventually happen to you?
It's pretty high.
Yeah, pretty high. Pretty high.
An understatement.
Damn near 100%, right? So before this happens to you, one of the things we talk about is to establish a relationship with a company like Mike's. Mike, you want to talk about, like, when we say a company like yours, what do we mean?
A company like Black Swan Cybersecurity, we're not just a managed security services firm from a protection monitoring perspective. We're also an incident response and litigation support firm. So kind of that trusted advisor that you can call for, the entire spectrum of IT cyber issues or questions or services. And that perspective that we bring to the table regardless of where we or how we work with a particular organization, we're able to expand the value of that conversation based on all the other things we do. So we're not just talking about keeping you from getting attacked or mitigating what that attack might look like. We can also talk about, well, if you do get attacked, depending on what controls or services or capabilities you have, this is what you can expect on the back end of an attack and how that's going to go. And so even if you have all the greatest tools and brand names deployed in your environment, odds are it's going to happen. And we saw that with CrowdStrike, right? It wasn't a cyber attack on you. It was an outage on CrowdStrike that left your environment vulnerable. And then you get attacked because bad guys watch the news also. All right, so now what? I had CrowdStrike, but I got attacked. Who do I call now? I'm probably not going to call CrowdStrike because they're busy putting out their own fire. And I'm a little upset at them now. So who am I going to call instead? And so having those resources in your pocket and having gotten to know them before an incident, call them today when things are nice and calm and you can have a good conversation or cup of coffee, and not when the house is on fire and you're emotional and you're not sure what to say or what to do next.
Yeah. So I like that idea of having basically, the thing is that the good news is that most people don't have a lot of experience in cyber recovery, right? And by that, I mean, if they did, then that would really suck because that means that they're doing it all the time. And so this is definitely one of those things where I think a professional can come in, come in handy quite a bit, right? I did, while you were talking, I got this image of you standing between the fan and the feces. And fighting it off. So we talked about lost revenue, or we didn't talk about. The first thing we talked about lost wages, and we talked about bringing in third-party services. What were you about to say, Prasanna?
But also along the recovery aspect, before we get to the revenue piece, right? Mm-hmm. You might need hardware, right? Maybe you need to buy more servers, or maybe you need to spin up services in AWS, or pick your cloud service in order to recover or start to recover while you're still remediating other systems in the environment.
Maybe you're going to need all of those things, right? And and it's going to be into this category of spare no expense, right? You're not going to be able to order your servers on Amazon Prime and wait for free 2-day delivery. You're going to be calling your server company of choice and going, I need 1,300 new, Dell 9500. I don't know any server volume numbers or model numbers.
And really, I'll tell you, even the U.S. government would have trouble getting 1-day turnaround on 1,300 servers.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think perhaps the thing that we're getting to last in terms of some of these costs is the lost business revenue, right? So we live in a very connected world, and when you go to do business with some sort of entity, right? Obviously, this speaks more to commercial businesses rather than governmental entities, because it's not like we can go, oh, well, the city of San Diego is down, I will go give my money to Irvine. It doesn't quite work like that. But with a business, when you go to interact with that business and you see that it is down, it's not like your need goes away. So you as a consumer goes and spends your money elsewhere, and that's money that you're never going to get back.
And your reputation. So it's not just that direct client that you lost, it's everybody they know also that might have potentially either they were or could potentially be a client of yours in the future.
Do you know, Mike, sorry, I like to ask stats questions because you seem to have so many of them. Do you know what percentage of businesses that get hit with ransomware go under?
Oh, it's over half. So if you don't have a solid, well, it's over half for those that don't have a solid response plan.
Okay.
So more than 50% of the companies that get hit with ransomware or any significant cyber incident and they don't have an incident response plan can't survive. But ransomware, especially the double extortion one, very hard on businesses that aren't prepared for that for two reasons. One, they've got to pay for the recovery from the event itself. And then because it's double extortion, a lot of those organizations can't afford the regulatory fines for the PII or consumer-related data that they're going to get fined, especially if it's California with, was it $25 a record? Yeah, it's crazy.
I think we should get that money. Don't you think, Prasanna? You and I live in California. Why don't we get this money when our records, why do they get more money? Because our data was hurt. That's all I'm saying. Although $25 is not going to be much, but
and I guess that's a third category, right? We talked about revenue, but then there are the fines.
Yeah, the regulatory fines. It is true. GDPR is huge, right? If you're in that world, because they start talking about a percentage of annual turnover, right? Which is semi-analogous to revenue. It's a different term, but I've never quite fully understood the difference between annual. Do you know, Mike? Are you a revenue annual turnover person? The difference between those two?
Stick with U.S. terms.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's like 4%, though, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's like 4% of the annual turnover. Yeah. So we talked about lost revenue, and Mike, you talked about the reputation effect, because I can think back on companies that have lost my data, companies that have had incidents with my data, and I haven't forgotten that, right? I can think literally, of like the first cyber incident that I remember that involved my data. It goes, all the way back to 2005, and I remember that incident, and I know exactly which company that was, and I will never forget it. Right? Now in that particular company, I don't get a choice of not working with them. Right? It's the credit reporting agency, right? But I wish we had the choice of not working with these companies.
But here's a question though, Curtis. Do you remember that first one clearly? Mm-hmm. Do you remember the next 25 or 50 that have come up? Just given how many of those notices that you get every month?
Yeah. I mean, that is a good point, right? That we are starting to get somewhat. It's sort of like, Mike, you don't live in California, but in California we over here we have this like thing about this thing has been shown to cause cancer. Literally everywhere you go.
I see them on all the labels, but I'm able to tear that one off.
Yeah. But with every business that you go in there, it's like it's like there's certainly alert fatigue. So that's a good point, Prasanna. But I will say that I definitely remember the ones that definitely inconvenienced me. Right?
Definitely.
I definitely do. Where if I was significantly inconvenienced, I definitely remember that. And my point is that I will never forgive that. I will never forget that. I can also remember, and again, I'm not going to throw their name out because I don't want to get sued, but I also know the one backup company that I know lost people's data, right? Mm-hmm. And I won't ever forget that, right? So the damage to your reputation, I don't think you can ever get back. And another thing that you're never going to get back, we talked about lost revenue. There's lost revenue of what happens during the outage. But what happens if during the outage, your customer goes to your competitor and they go, oh, this company's not as bad as I thought it was. I guess we could continue doing business with them over here. Now, not only did you lose revenue during that outage, you have lost the future revenue from that customer, and the reputational damage that you talked about, Mike. That does damage to future revenue from future customers. They're going around Googling whether or not they should do business with you, and this is the story that pops up, right?
And
go ahead.
And Curtis, I know we've done podcast episodes last year, mm-hmm. right? If I look at Rackspace and their mm-hmm. Exchange outage, which caused them to shut down a huge business for them, right? Hosted Exchange. We also talked about LastPass.
Yep.
And their breach. And you could just imagine like all those fines and penalties. I think they even started getting sued like years later, right after the incident happened, because sometimes it takes that long before criminal activities start to show up based on the data that was stolen.
Yeah. I actually know somebody, by the way, that went to go do marketing at LastPass. And I was like, good luck with that.
There's a couple other things to consider too. We talked about overtime and the internal staff that are addressing a particular incident. You may actually mm-hmm. lose that staff. They're used to their 8 to 5 or shift job, and now you've got them working 3 days straight with sleeping on the floor at their desk and eating, carry out food or pizza, which I wouldn't mind for 3 days. But at the end of that, they're exhausted, and that's not what they signed up for. Or maybe even they were getting a little bit of attitude from other employees or executives, and they quit. And it's probably the ones that quit are probably the ones that have been telling you that there's this problem that hasn't been addressed for some period of time. And that's what led to this breach. And they're like, I told you so. And, I'll help you get through this, but I'll be out after that. The other thing, so the human impact, and whether they quit or not, they're not going to be the same person. It's like going into war. Like you come out the other side and you don't see things the same way. You're not the same person. So people that have been through a significant incident they're changed in a way. All right, so there's the human person, the human perspective or the impact. Supply chain and supply chain's one. So now you're probably gonna burn some bridges trying to get equipment or support. And by that I mean you're gonna approach this incident with a little bit of emotion and aggressiveness that some people may not appreciate. And then the other part of that is if you're heavily involved in financing stuff, right? Like maybe you're building a new facility, or you need credit to buy equipment that you then resell. This incident could impact your credit rating as a company, your bond rating. Things like that may. So maybe you're a construction company and you build hospitals and military bases, and now all of a sudden you've got this cyber attack that puts you down. Those financial funding vehicles may have a different perspective of working with you in the future also.
Yeah, no, when you were talking about that, Mike, I was thinking about the reputation comment you made earlier, where you've now impacted not only the reputation of your customers, but even your vendors and suppliers too. We're like, nope, we don't quite trust what you're doing, or maybe you don't get preferred rates or other things like that potentially as well.
And it's weird. It's not just the inputs; it's also the outputs. It's from a vendor or relationship or system perspective. We worked with a company. It was a dental practice. Their payment processor shut off when they had an incident. They notified everybody, very diligent and responsible. The payment processor shut off access, and even after they said we fixed all the problems, the payment processor required a third-party objective review of that environment before they turned that access back on. So it wasn't just paper records and operating the way we used to. They were literally also having to take credit card, the carbon copy swipes of credit cards to take payment so that they could process it later when their payment processor came back online.
That's crazy. I don't even remember the last time I had to do that.
And to that point, I mean, these are all things you've got to think about today. All right, so if our payment, whatever all our critical things, well, payment processing is a critical thing. Well, what happens if that goes away? How are we going to process our payments?
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I just I don't know, a week or two ago, I set up a new my new LLC. I set it up in Stripe to be able to accept, to be able to send a payment link. That took a few days, right? Because there's an authentication process. And so even if let's say if you're able to quickly go over to another payment processor, it's not like that's going to just start processing payments immediately for you.
They did not pay the ransom. So even with $30 million in insurance coverage, not even paying the ransom, their recovery cost was almost $65 million.
Right. And then, of course, they're going to end up with probably increased insurance rates after this and possible cancellation of the policy, right? I wonder, Mike, have you ever seen that where people file a claim and then they get their cyber insurance policy canceled?
Yes, but it's less common than the insurance company giving them a very long list of things they've got to remediate and prove that they've remediated that to keep their policy. Their premium will go up because their risk went up.
Right.
But that's usually just in the following year. So let's say, every year there's a 3% increase after an incident. Having satisfied the insurance company's remediation list, if you do all that, you may get a 5.5% or 6% increase in your premium for the next year. Well, then subsequent years, that may go back down to just the standard 3% or whatever it is, if you maintain your hygiene and control effectiveness according to, and that insurance company may ask for multiple years of third-party assessments to keep the policy.
And we're going to cover this on a later episode, but that's definitely something that you should be doing up front, again, where you can talk to your insurance company. What are the things that we should be doing already, right? Again, talk to a company like yours, right? A blue team company that will help you defend yourself. So let's talk about. Go ahead.
I have one.
Yep.
So as Mike was talking about that, one thing popped to my mind, which was, so you get hit with ransomware. You're like, okay, X, Y, and Z all needs to change. There's the cost of updating and changing processes. That may be significant depending on how you are operating today. That I think, and I don't know how to quantify that. I'm sure it depends on what the risk is, or like Mike, what you were saying, if your insurance company tells you to remediate a bunch of issues, that might involve significant restructuring of your organization processes in order to be able to handle this.
Here's a good example. Let's say you're a medium-sized company. You probably have some things documented, like how do I restore a computer? How do we revert to a manual process in the absence of our systems being available? You probably have some of that documented. It's probably old. Maybe some of it's tribal knowledge. But as a result of an incident, the insurance company may come and do an audit, and they may say, you've got some or nothing, but this is what we expect. And so in a lot of cases, you can't just update something that's been in place for a long time because it's obviously not effective. And in order for a control to be effective, it has to be designed well. In order to design well, you've got to get good information, current information from all the stakeholders. And so a control is this thing that operates, and most controls have inputs and outputs. And so those are other stakeholders in control. So you've got this kind of enterprise exercise that you have to go through. And if you haven't gone through a business impact analysis, this exercise would be very similar. So you essentially go and look for all the critical things in our company that keep the lights on and pay the bills and sustain our revenue and our reputation and our client base and whatever those things are. And in that assessment, you then determine what are the critical people, processes, and technologies required to function. And then what are the alternatives? So if that thing goes away, I can do it this other way for a period of time. But what is that? What's that pain point? Is it an hour? Is it a day? And how do I quantify that? Is that $1 million an hour? Is it $1 million a day? Is it $1 million a week? And so now we've got all of this stuff laid out and current so that I know if that department or that process breaks, this is how much time and what is required to recover. And in that time, this is my financial impact or these other impacts. It could be, if it's a hospital and the intensive care unit goes down, that could be human life. It could be regulatory, whatever the case is. But I have all this stuff lined out now. And then from this body of knowledge that I've just created, that translates directly into business continuity, disaster recovery, incident response, and how I categorize all my, the criticality of all these things that could happen. Ransomware on a print server, probably not really high unless that print server is what's creating checks or shipping orders, and I'm shipping $1 million things. And so that's a perspective. A lot of people think, well, ransomware on a print server, that's nothing. Well, it is if that's how you make money. And so going through an exercise like that really puts some gravity and awareness in your environment that you can share with leadership, executive leadership. And that's very important because when we go to leadership and say, I need budget to keep the lights on to make sure this stuff doesn't happen. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to pay that because we've got this new marketing advertising campaign to, for whatever. And they don't always realize that where they're focused, oftentimes leaves a huge gap in risk. And maybe there's some kind of middle ground that we can come to or roadmap we can build. Maybe we don't have to do it all at the same time. But, this month we need to do something, and 6 months we need to do something, and so on. But that business impact analysis and that huge analysis of all those different criticalities and risks will help you have that conversation. And by the way, leadership, executive leadership is often included in those workshops and that process, that exercise. So they get to participate and have some introspection of their business and their responsibility during that exercise. So that helps facilitate a better discussion.
Well, that whole thing that you just described, it's one of those things where it's the phrase, never time to do it right, always time to do it over, right? It falls into that category of like, it's business activities that you need to do that are best done up front, and they're kind of a pain. Like everything you just described sounds really, really important, but it's a pain. Right.
But you know what? I think there's some misconception there. Yeah, it's going to take time away from your job. But to your point, if I'm busy doing something and my daughter calls me, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I may have an hour phone call with my daughter, 30 minutes, whatever the case is, because I can prioritize that over this spreadsheet I'm creating.
Yeah.
If you can set aside an hour to talk to an advisor or a consultant about this business impact analysis, you sometimes you just have to have it on your calendar and you're just going to do it. And I think there's a misconception that this business impact analysis is this huge, cumbersome, 90-day, 120-day thing. And yeah, I'm sure there's some large enterprises where it would take that long. But for the most part, small to medium-sized businesses can get a BIA done in 1 to 3 weeks. And that's like one person talking with, one-on-one with different. We did a city government, 14, 15 different departments. We did it in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point, Mike. The point you made a different point, which is a great point. The point I was making was whatever level of pain it is, whether it's a day, weeks, or months, the point is that by doing this work up front, it gives you the power that you need to make the changes that you need to your environment from a recovery perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, and also when the feces hits the rotary oscillator, you know where you need to be, right? You know, like you said, you know that your daughter calling is important, right? You will know, well, I know that this thing, like, you talked about the print server, let's say, I immediately thought of what we used to call Kinko's. You remember Kinko's? Now it's called the FedEx Print Center. Which I was in a FedEx print center just a few days ago.
In the middle
their
there,
print server,
FedEx Kinko's.
Yes, it was. There was a FedEx Kinko's. Yeah, but in their print server going down, that is a direct revenue generator, right? So if you know that, you know the different parts of your business, and you know the costs that your business is going to experience when a ransomware attack hits, it just empowers you with the ability to make the right decisions to minimize the impact on your business. So
knowledge is power, and my other favorite saying from G.I. Joe is knowing is half the battle.
Love it.
Is that from G.I. Joe the movie?
It's G.I. Joe. Well, it started with the
TV show.
Cartoons. It's at the very end, it's knowing is half the battle. Duke would always say that at the end.
For the record, not familiar with G.I. Joe beyond the toy.
Oh, it's amazing. Cobra and
yeah. So the next thing, another action item. So we talked about doing a BIA, right? The next thing that we have as action items is to review your insurance coverage. You want to talk about that, Mike? Like what kind of stuff?
Well, it's critical because I think there's a lot of companies that just Google cyber insurance and they get quotes and they go with the lowest quote and they figure they're the lowest premium and they figure they're covered. Well, you're covered based on all that fine print. And I've got a pretty interesting example. So in addition to helping companies on the defensive side, we also do litigation support, and in one case, we were working for the insurance company who didn't want to pay a claim, and so they sent us all this data, and our objective was to determine where did the attack originate? Was it a domestic attack? Was it international? It turned out to be international, and they declined the claim because the policy only covered domestic attacks.
Wow.
So it is important, go with a reputable insurance carrier, make sure you read the fine print, get an advisor or a broker to help you. And then, a lot of that process stems from a questionnaire that the insurance company is going to send you. And a lot of organizations, especially the small ones, don't know how to fill out that questionnaire. A lot of times it's yes, no, they don't give you the opportunity to add context. Like there's no maybe, it's either yes or no. And so I think a lot of organizations in the maybe category will still say yes, even though they're not sure, or maybe it's not fully implemented. Well, the insurance company is going to hold you to those answers if there's an incident or a breach. And they're going to go, well, you said yes, and it's actually no, so we're not going to cover your claim because you lied to us when we established this policy. The other thing to think about, too, is you can have more than one policy. Just make sure that you maintain and are fully aware of both of them and, any attributes or requirements or stipulations in either one.
That brings up a story. Do you remember Tony Curtis from SpectraLogic when he came on the podcast?
Yeah.
And so this was a company, Mike, that got hit with ransomware, shut down their entire
which
environment.
Happens to be in the backup industry, by the way. Spectra is a tape library manufacturer, right?
And I think he was like head of IT or something, some position like that. And he found out that just the week before they had signed up for a cyber insurance policy.
Yeah.
It was like a week or two before. He was like, oh my gosh, thank God. Well, so they brought in all the experts and all the rest.
I'm glad it worked out for him, because a lot of those, a lot of policies will have a cooling off period. So you sign up today, but it's really not effective for 30 days.
Yeah. So I guess the last action item is you've sort of gone through, you've created a BIA, you've done all these things, and making sure that you understand what needs to be recovered first. It's kind of like Mike was talking about the prioritization, right? So making sure you understand what is critical to your business, have that listed down. So those are the things that you focus on first, rather than say Curtis's home directory, which isn't the highest priority to recover from a ransomware attack.
It is to me.
Well, it's not the first thing. I know it's important to you, Curtis, all the cat videos that you have, but
cat video.
I think that those are great points. And so in your BIA, one of the outputs of your BIA as far as prioritization goes, it's not just the criticality of a particular system, but it's also the recovery point objective. So does that system have a lot of journaling that would allow us to do manual input or manual transactions? And so just as an example, we had a ransomware incident with a client who got hit on a Thursday night, 10 o'clock. And we knew exactly what servers they hit and how it happened. We were comfortable thinking that Thursday night is when the attack happened. It wasn't sometime in the past. Well, we still needed to have that conversation with the client. Like, how far back, how many days or weeks back should we target to recover from? Because we don't want to just do earlier today or yesterday, because that may also have the attack artifacts in it, malware, whatever it was. And so having a good understanding of their backup strategy and their capabilities, we were able to just say, all right, well, because in this case, it was a heavily virtualized environment. Well, let's go with Tuesday, and let's run all of our analysis against Tuesday's restored systems before we put them back online. If they're clean, then we'll go with Tuesday. If not, then we can go with Monday or whatever. A lot of organizations still have this full incremental, weekly, that kind of backup schedule, because they haven't adopted virtualization or whatever the case might be. And so if a system was compromised between those fulls, then you've got to do fulls plus the incrementals to get you back to some restore point. Well, your BIA is going to help you determine how far back can I go before it hurts. And if I have to go back further, do I have transaction, logs, journaling to help me fill in the gaps? And if not, then, here's the impact that I can expect. One of the other things I was going to add, and I lost my train of thought a bit. And what was it?
So you were just talking about journaling and.
Oh, here's another funny example. Funny for now that it's years later, but
tragedy plus time equals comedy.
It was a telecom, $5 billion telecom, and they had an outage, and the outage sat on top of a legacy server. That legacy server continued to be backed up every day, but it was backed up initially to 9-track backup tape. The backup technology was in current day was the DLT tapes.
Yeah.
But they didn't create a base system backup, a bare metal backup on DLT tape. It was the only bare metal backup was on 9-track. So when they had to recover this server, they couldn't, because they couldn't find a 9-track tape to recover the tape from. So yeah, they were down hard for over a month. until we found one on eBay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not uncommon.
Yeah. You know what? When you were talking about just like, switching to alternative methods, remind me, I think it was a Xerox commercial when they go, if your printers go down, do your people go, it's okay, we'll just use carbon paper? It's like, no, they're not going to do that. Well, yeah, I think we've given people enough to think about and to, some action items where they can go work. It sounds like they'll do their BIA in a day or two, and then they'll be good.
Just knock it out. Get it out of the way.
Knock it out. Just, it's like a lot of things. Just do it sooner than later. Doesn't matter when. The only thing that I know is it doesn't matter when you invent a time machine. All right. And with that, that is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.